on staying here super long. I don't think Jess can either. But I do think this is, I don't know. This is something that's so central to everything that I'm about intellectually in TLC. Anyhow, and we were just talking about it offline, and I was like, why not? Let's just go live stream about it. And I think what you said, number one, I told you, I was like, I maybe have never felt more seen. so thank you for that. And I could go off on a bunch of my riffing, and I might want to read some of those songs that I sent you, because I think they very much relate, and this very much is part of my Eve Barsley Clem Snide kick lately, but also that Lucretia song. But yeah, you can either try to repeat what you were saying before or say whatever, but essentially that's why I named it I Am Leviathan, because of your message to me. It was very good. I felt very, I mean, I didn't cry, surprisingly, but I probably should have.
No, that's good. I mean, we were talking about this on the stream yesterday, but maybe just to start out, like we're talking about the idea of becoming Leviathan, and not, you know, Peterson talks about chaos and order and whatever. And often we think of Leviathan as a chaos monster or a personification of chaos, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Leviathan as the thing that lives in the chaos, that actually thrives there and is sort of like the king of the sea. And so that the sea
King
is
of chaos.
Yeah, and David was talking about great yesterday. It's salt water. You can't live in salt water. Salt water is poison. Like if you drink it, it'll kill you. But like in Psalm 104, the psalmist, after surveying all of God's creation in the sky and on the land, looks out to the sea and says, "Oh, there's life there too. Like there's thriving there." And and so there's this idea of becoming Leviathan, which is hey, there's David. What's up? That you become the thing that can live in chaos. And so it would be someone maybe similar to like a holy fool, maybe similar to some of these notions of a mediator that's between things, that's not grounded firmly on one thing or another, but can navigate space in between. It's also that notion that Peterson talks about of trying to navigate that ever shifting line. Like that's literally what we're talking about is becoming the thing that can walk that line or something. And so there, we have lots of different stories about Leviathan. So I talked about, I won't go into detail about it, but I talked about at the end of Job becoming a Leviathan. We talked about Jonah being swallowed by the Leviathan, and then it's in the belly of the whale that he remembers the holy place, and that it's in the belly of the whale he remembers God, and there's this connection between him and God that is renewed, that wasn't available anywhere else. Like he left his country, he was on the ship, he was in the storm, he was thrown into the sea, but it was in the belly of Leviathan. And then so we have becoming Leviathan, we have in the belly of Leviathan, and then we have the picture of Jesus walking on the water, which is walking on Leviathan, and he invites Peter to come out. And I was just re-looking at that story, because Peter comes out, is walking on the water, and then he becomes afraid, not of the waves, not of the what he is doing. He becomes afraid of the wind. He sees the wind, and then and I don't know what that means, but anyway, that's what I'm talking about in this sort of poetic frame of being Leviathan. And so someone who, this is what I was talking about with Luke just before we jumped on here, which is if you're a person of faith who has been through enough, you'll become someone who can mediate, and someone who can walk the ever shifting sands, and who can navigate the seas. You become can become a Leviathan, I guess, in those senses, because it has to do with hitting rock bottom and then emerging from that. And so you, the story is like you had some sort of groundedness that gets swept away by disaster, by trauma, by life circumstance. God will sweep you away. But what you do is you found a deeper grounding in God, and it's a deeper faith. And because of that, like when you express it, you can be threatening to people that have not had that experience, because they fear losing their groundedness. They
Because you
have a
look like a
groundedness.
monster.
Yeah, and so a Leviathan is a monster to people who are grounded. And you know, if but the problem with being grounded is you can't mediate. You're sort of, you know, I'm kind of going out there with this metaphor a bit, but I want to push this, is that God eventually will want you to be able to mediate and navigate the chaos. He doesn't want you just fixed in stagnation and
Ooh, you know
just
what I
like,
just thought of?
yeah.
Paralandra. In Paralandra, the one rule is the fixed land. You cannot stay overnight on the fixed land. You can visit it, but you need to stay on the floating islands. The
Yeah.
undulating, moving, floating islands.
And what the reason why is that there was a different fixed land that they needed to go to. And though they needed to navigate the chaos in order to be at the proper fixed place.
To be
And
ready for the fixed
that's
land.
what Jonah discovers in the belly of the whale, is the proper fixed place, so to speak. And you know, that's what you experience when you go into deep chaos, is that there is actually a deeper groundedness that you were afraid, or that you didn't think exists, but it actually does.
Yeah, pre-ordered chaos. Pre-ordered order. Like that's another way to think of
Yeah.
chaos. Yeah.
Or it could even be like you're afraid to go in the water because you can't touch the bottom. But what you
Yeah.
learn in the process is that you can swim. And that learning how to swim is a groundedness that's more that that's
Beyond
it's a
having your feet
groundedness
on the
that's
ground.
not about touching with your feet.
Yeah.
It's about it's a something that you're doing that enables you to, now you're not afraid of the water because you can swim. Um, I I guess it's interesting because I don't think, I don't know, like, are we supposed to just live like that? And part of me is like, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe it's a transition. It's a transformational transitory thing that you're able to move through, like a death and rebirth thing. But
Right. Well,
anyway, I said a lot.
yeah, that's the so I want to transition. I want to read a comment and then use that to transition to the other thing that we were talking about this morning. But to answer that question first, or to riff on that, is I think that is the non-dualism that includes duality. And it's the kind of thing that we've been talking about, is, are you meant to be that way? Well, that's the way I would relate it, is that's kind of like what I mean by iconic thinking and labels and identitarianism, is like, God is he about whom you must never speak, but you must always keep speaking. So can you be in the place that is fluid swimming, not grounded in a label, in an identity, in identitarianism? Can you swim, but also label? Do both, like, and move in between and back and forth through both of those things, so that you never get stuck where you're just like, I have to be grounded or else
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to die. Like, I have to
Mm-hmm.
have this label. Like, are you open to the truth outside the truth you currently apprehend? That thing, because that's the Leviathan. That's the walking
Mm-hmm.
on water. But that doesn't mean that you can't ever adopt a descriptor.
No, I think that's exactly right. And this becomes strange because you'll, like, say someone who is still on the dock, you know, someone swimming in the water is like, hey, jump on in, you can do it. And they're like, they're that doesn't I'm trying to use the metaphor, but maybe it doesn't work. But it's sort of like they ask the question, they're like, can you touch the bottom? You're like, no, I'm swimming. They're like, well, if you can't touch the bottom, then I'm not jumping in. You're like, no, you're fine. I'm doing a thing called swimming. And he's like, is that like touching the bottom? You're like, well, not really. And so you get in these weird arguments where
It's like, yeah, it's
you're
being
talking about two
grounded,
different
not touching
things.
the bottom.
Yeah, and how do you convince someone who's used to standing that there's this other thing called swimming that they can do?
Is
And
this
when you
whatever
talk
doesn't come
about it,
from?
you can't talk about it in terms of standing, but that's all they
No.
know.
But that's why I said it's like it's being grounded, not touching the ground. Like that's why I
Yeah,
say things like that, because that's what swimming is. It's being safe
yeah,
and grounded. It's the metaphor of grounded. It's the thing behind the thing behind the thing. Like when you say grounded, that's what you mean. You're
mhm,
okay.
right,
So
right.
swimming,
They're
you're
actually
okay.
asking,
You are grounded.
but for the person on the dock, being okay and grounded are synonymous. And what you're saying is like,
Standing
no,
on the ground. Yeah.
you can jump in and still be okay, and there's no
Yeah.
ground.
Yeah.
But what you're involved in is this movement that enables you to just you're all right.
Right. Okay. So I think this is a perfect transition because David, he had asked the question earlier. So this, I think it's related to this. So don't go into it right away. What about the idea in Revelation? In the end, there will be no sea. And I think this is very related to what I shared with you that Paul said in the end of his video today, which was we talk too much. We don't really talk too much, but so the end of Paul's video at like the 1 hour, 13 minute, 28 second, he talked about the freedom of the resurrection. And he said like, and this is something that I shared with you because we've been talking about GP Xavier's video on Dionysius versus Christianity and how that relates to the Jordan Hall Vervaeke Peugeot conversation and Vervaeke's critique of Christianity as escapism. So both of these things, I think both David's comment and what Paul is saying of like the freedom of the resurrection is the kind of escapism, could be the kind of escapism that Vervaeke is concerned with. You know, like I don't have to fear death because I have this resurrection, which is actually that thing, Christian, if you believe in resurrection that way, I'm going to assert that that's mammon. I'm going to assert that that's transactionalism, and it's not actually faith in God. It's not actually becoming Leviathan in the way that we're talking about it. Those are subtly different things. And I don't know, David, I don't know. What do you think about this idea that there will be no more sea? Could that be a linguistic way of saying you can walk on water? Not that there's no sea, but that you can be grounded on the sea.
The way I primarily take that is it's a new beginning. When was there not a sea earlier? It was in Genesis. We don't have the sea until
We don't have the separation of
there's the
waters.
waters below and the waters above, but the land
Yeah.
is drawn out of the waters below, and it's not till
Yeah.
after Noah that we have the seas. That's one way of reading that. And so what we have is a new beginning, and it begs the question: it's like, will there be future seas again? There's no more sea now. There's still a river, and it's this because in the pre-fall creation, everything's watered from the ground. There's not even any rain. There's no rain, and there's no sea. Well, maybe no, that's wrong. Because the seas, creation of the seas is one day not said to be. Yeah. So anyway, I'm probably like
Here,
not quite right
go
with that,
here, go here,
but
go
I
to
think
what.
I think it does signal like a new beginning, and like a new sort of understanding and a new establishment of the world that's sort of like incorporated all the things that were disjointed and that have come out of that disjointedness. So like one example is after the fall and after Cain kills Abel, he's afraid, so he builds the first cities. And then in the very end, you have the New Jerusalem, the city. And so you have like the redemption of the city, which wasn't there before the fall, happens after the fall, and then now you have the New Jerusalem. So there's some sort of integration and
Yeah.
reordering of everything, so that
It's like the heavenly Babylon.
yeah, and that's why I kind of think like maybe the Leviathan type thing
Yeah.
is a transitionary thing that where you could even see like pre-fall all the way to Revelation, as that being the sea, and then these are the two fixed lands on the either side of it, if that makes sense. Like and so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of coming to the limit of how far I've talked about this this
No, that's okay.
metaphor.
No, that's all right. But
But I think like it, you know, because I also want to avoid just being like, well, everyone should just jump off the fixed land and into the crazy sea, and we should all be Leviathans, and like that's not the thing either.
each in
It's
its own
something,
time, I think.
huh?
I think each in its own time, or like each according to the dictates of its own conscience. I mean, it can't be. It's received with meekness the implanted word. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
that is where everybody has to get, but you can't. You can't get. No, you can't. You can't. The way to teach swimming lessons isn't to just throw everybody into the water at the same time. You know, because like there'll be people that drown
Yeah, that's a disaster.
because they're not ready
Yeah,
to
you want
swim.
what you want to have is swimming lessons,
Yeah,
not throw everyone or a
yeah.
flood. You don't want a
Listen,
flood. You want swimming lessons.
listen. At some point, you have to learn how to swim. So we're just gonna chuck you in the ocean. Oh, believe it. So one of the other things, I don't know what this
It's
means.
literally the title of the video.
Yeah, yeah. You see through me.
It's on your
You see to
name
what I'm
too.
trying to cunningly say by not saying. Um, the other thing that I wanted you to talk about, and I think I just want to keep this relatively short because you got stuff to do and I have stuff to do. We probably won't even open it up, but I want you to talk about creation and like how you were talking about seeing creation, the different modes of seeing creation as um like when you were riffing on Paul's my comment on Paul's video.
Yeah, um, you know, I don't normally like comment on like current theological debates or current, you know, like people are wrong or whatever, but um this is maybe where some of that kind of hits onto that where um all right, I'm gonna make one caricature and then contrast it to another. So the first one is that there's this fall, and man is thrust into sin, which is eternally uh, an eternal problem for man, and man needs saving. So Jesus comes, dies, pays the price, you know, all does something on the cross, dies for man so that he can be saved and is not bound by sin anymore and is redeemed. Thus, we have the promise of the resurrection. We have the you know, all this stuff. So this is the reason why Jesus comes, to save man. And then along with that belief, people will be like, okay, how did God create the world? He created it by speaking, snapping his fingers, and it came. So they see the sacrifice of Christ and the creation of the world is sort of two different things that really don't have anything to do with each other. And I think this is, I want to like get rid of that. I want people to understand that the creation of the world is what Christ is doing. He's doing all the sin stuff. He's taking care of our sin. It's not a it it he's removing it from the equation. But also, what he is doing is he's showing how everything is created. And so, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And so, I don't want to dive into a huge rabbit hole of trying to describe like what the infinite God is doing in when he's creating the world. But I would say that what we see in Christ is the image of God creating the world, and that his sacrifice isn't just for our sins, it's for our being. That this is there's a sacrifice God makes in order so that other things can be other than himself. He's infinite. And David was talking about it yesterday in the terms of withdrawal.
Yeah.
So imagine like infiniteness, God in his infiniteness, which is everything everywhere all at once. And then how does anything else exist? Well, he's got to create a space for it. So there's like a withdrawal where God removes himself, so to speak. There's a piercing and a removal so that something else could be
Yeah.
in that space and have an identity other than just like part of the. And so this is I think this is Trinitarian theology in a nutshell. But this is also how God creates the world. So the infinite God is pierced, retracts, and then gives of himself so that something else can be. Like he pours himself out in order that we can have being. And so that's the image of Christ on the cross. So all of a sudden the crucifixion of Jesus and then the creation of the world are the same exact things. Like it's the
Yeah.
same. And what what this does is it shows a bigger picture of what Christ is doing rather than just an atonement for sin. I think I did. That was all right.
Yeah. Which would be that kind of transaction thing, linear progression of time. God created, it's this perfect thing. We want to return to that oceanic oneness utopian thing. And so then, oh no, there's this problem. So we got to solve it. So we come in plan B. And it's very much the Maximus thing that Peugeot talks about a lot, like God creating from the cross. This is being itself. And the other thought I had while you were talking is it's not so much heliocentrism or like what's the Earth, the center of the universe thing? What's the opposite?
I don't know.
Terracentrism?
Maybe.
I can't remember what the other term is. But really it's anthropocentrism. Anthropos.
Geocentric.
Yeah, geocentric. There we go. Sorry. It's so the human is the center of this. That's why I say the person is the nexus and the locus of all meaning, but also all being. This is why, like even in Orthodoxy, like I think Abby said Holy Saturday or something. I think it is during Lent in Holy Saturday, or I think it's Holy Saturday when the line Christ the only existent one comes in. Because that is being. That is the thing that you're talking about. But it's not just the Big Bang, impersonal. It is that, but it's human being, consciousness, not just physical material reality out of which consciousness is just an emergent thing. It's almost like a panpsychic consciousness, but also the physical world, both of those things emerging at the same time, which happens from a Christian worldview, like that's happening at the cross. So it's not this the whole time thing. I wish people would meditate more on how that is such a projection. Like time isn't real. Like even with Einstein, it's not real. It's relative. We know that.
Yeah, I mean that whole idea messes with your linear progression of time.
But no matter what worldview and frame you want to use, linear time is just a narrative. It's just an interpretive removal from reality.
I mean, it can be, but linear time is like it's not a total illusion. We are sort of moving forward through something, but this is, I mean, I don't think you have to go as far as just being like it is something that you need to kind of like think around and think about, and not just take as a sort of a fundamental given. But even if you did, like, here's a way you could imagine it, in linear time that I think would make sense, which is Jesus says he is the image. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And so what he does on the cross is an exact representation of what the infinite God does to bring creation into existence. So when you see him, you see what God does. And so you can even see it in that sort of linear time, that you don't have to imagine that like Christ is creating the world from the cross, but like he is.
Yeah.
but
Well, and
if you had to stick with a linear view of time, he's the icon. He is God creating the world.
Yes.
And it's an exact representation. Like it's just the image of the creation of the world. And
Yeah.
if you want to go back in time and see it, you just have to see Christ on the cross.
Right. And that is the medium is the message. Okay, let's wrap this up. I want to wrap this up with a couple things. I'll give you the last word. This is my last word.
I feel like I talked this whole video.
But that's good because I talked too much and I wanted you to say the things that you said, so that was perfect. So from Graham Pardone's North Estuary Talk, this Vine Deloria quote. So what I will amend my time comment that it's not an illusion, but it's an absolutizing of a binary, the linear thing. If you absolutize that, that's not just what time is. Time is relative. And so he says, like, if time becomes our primary consideration, we never seem to arrive at the reality of our existence in places, but instead are always directed to experiential interpretations rather than to the experiences themselves. That's what I was trying to say. The interpretation, the abstraction. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you were talking, what I thought of, it's the medium is the message. And it's McLuhan, and it's this quote, which will be my last thing. I didn't have it ready, but I know where it is, and I'm fast. Okay. So McLuhan says, in Jesus Christ, there is no distance or separation between the medium and the message. It is the one case where you can say that the medium and the message are fully one and the same. So like, and I think you can think of medium and message as, I don't know, somehow I think those are related to time and space too.
Yeah, I mean, you even think about just like figures in the Bible that sort of prefigure Christ in different ways, and then they fail in different ways, you know, like King David, Solomon, Abraham. Like they're
what did Chad say to me the other day? Because this even gets into the like, is this bad, and chaos and Leviathan, is that bad? Well, no, it's not. Or like when people say, when Jordan Peterson says the feminine is chaos or it's darkness or it's night, and the people are like, oh, that's bad, you know, that's really misogynistic. It's like, no, come on, stop thinking of this like a smart fifth grader. Like that's not what's going on. But it made me like, that's what happened in the conversation yesterday when we were talking about Saul and David, and how David said, you know, I will not raise a hand against Saul, the Lord's anointed. But it reminded me of this thing that Chad said to me the other day. I thought it was fantastic. So I just want to read it. Like, what do you, I think it's in a comment. Where are you, Chad? Never mind. I'm not going to be, but he said essentially like, oh, he said, I just want to say it. He said, I just want to say this. If there was no Hitler, we wouldn't have the band Rush. And I was just like, oh, man. I mean, we had to bring in a Hitler, some sort of Hitler comment.
Yeah, well,
it's my last word.
I mean, Leviathan is destructive. Like a Leviathan, like this is the weird thing, how it sort of connects to Job.
Or like Lucifer, the bringer of light, but in good, but it's good and bad. Did you see that?
Yeah, it's exactly what Peugeot was talking about. So you do have the bad Leviathan.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Like utterly terrible.
Am I
and
that one?
terrifying. Huh?
Am I that one?
I don't think so. I mean, we're
Okay, good.
friends, right?
Thanks.
You're like, I don't want to be bad.
This is the perfect comment. I don't want, guys. I don't want to be bad.
Oh,
I'm
there's
sorry. I
Leviathan.
won't get high.
Yeah, well, this gets to like everything sort of in its proper place. There's nothing bad on its own. Just things like nothing is unclean of itself. It is just when it's not in its proper place, and then we have a part to play in all that. And yeah, so even Lucifer, it's 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 a the going from order to disorder back to order again. I think it's a little bit of that story. And then why, the question is, why would God do that? And then the answer is just the book of Job.
We should, yeah,
God
we
got some
should
bigger
do.
ideas.
We should do a tree of life thing. Who was saying that the other day? That they
Yeah,
want to talk to
Alan,
you about tree of life.
you
Alan.
want to be involved in that?
I mean, I feel like Alan is a real jerk for not thinking of me in relation to tree of life. That's like one of my Luke bingo things.
Luke bingo.
Yeah,
I feel like my Luke bingo card is about like this big. It's huge.
it's real big.
It's like,
When I talk about anything, I
takes
talk
a
about
lot to get a
everything.
bingo when it's so large.
Another one. Okay. Let's shut her down. You good?
All right, I think this is good. That'll be enough for people. Maybe PVK will clip me. You think he'll clip me? I've never been clipped by PVK and used in a video.
I think you should. Well, it would be two of PBK's two things. It would be something new for him and something consistent for him. Is clipping you would be new, and never clipping me in my own live streams would be something he always does. So
Be like, Luke's live stream was really good. Here's a clip of someone else talking.
yeah, exactly. Oh man,
because Luke, you're the feminine. You're just the space creator.
You can't
for,
see me.
for creation to emerge from, and that's where
Mm,
you can't clip the womb.
that's right. Well, you can, and people are doing it nowadays.
Well,
They're
you
having,
shouldn't.
hysterectomies at 12. All right.
All right, that was probably a great.
Okay. In stream. Bye, everyone. Meow, meow.
Bye.